Retro.
Hi, this is Emily Swallow, the Armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krabs.
And it's Monday, so we're going to be continuing our rewatch of the Clone Wars, and we'll get to that in just a second. But before we do, Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are?
Absolutely. We are so conveniently found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The dish is aligned. The signal's boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So happy Monday, everyone. We hope your week is off to a good start, and it's one of the best weeks ever for you. This is going to be a full spoiler discussion of Pursuit of Peace, which is episode 11 from season 3 of the Clone Wars. So if you don't want to be spoiled, go ahead and pause this one. But Jay, you want to go ahead and give us the summary of this episode, please?
You got it, Dennis. After the Senate voted to deregulate the banks in the last episode, the time has come to vote on whether to purchase 5 million new clones funded by a loan from the banking clan. Padmé's pleas to not give up the peace process are interrupted by the holographic message from Count Dooku that a Republic attack has taken the life of Senator Bonteri. When Padmé learns that the loan from the banking clan will come with a 25% interest rate that will bankrupt the Republic, she convinces Senator Bail Organa to make a speech in opposition of the bill. However, after surviving an intimidation attack of her own, Bail is injured, and it is up to Padmé to sway the senators. Calling on the experience of the average citizen, Padmé's speech is a success, and the bill to authorize the purchase of additional clones is defeated.
Yeah, so we're continuing this storyline here, which is very political. And it's funny, if you look at the episode guide and the featurette on this, Dave Filoni talks about how he brought in a guest director, Dwayne Duham, that so they could zip up this episode a little bit. It had a bit of a because there's been a lot of politics in the Clone Wars this season. And as an aside, you may not know that name, Dwayne Duham, but he was the first person to ever put on Boba Fett armor. He had the white prototype suit that you've probably seen video of. So that was kind of cool. But anyways, his involvement is what got the speeder bike chase that Padmé's involved in here. So that said, what did you think about this one overall?
Oh, it's very heavy. I mean, as you just said, it's very politically oriented. And as Dave Filoni was talking about, even in the featurette, that's why they needed that little bit of levity in the middle to remind everyone that this is actually, an animated show for kids. So, but, it's also necessary to outline the underlying layers of everything that's been going on, with regards to as we talked about last week, with the idea of heroes on both sides and the treachery that comes with it, and the hiking up of the interest rates, and just made me think of DJ, in The Last Jedi, that everybody profits. It doesn't matter which side you're on, that somebody's going to profit from this. And in this case, everything's pointing towards the banking clan and the Separatists. But at the same time, we've got Palpatine working undercover or behind the scenes, I guess, to keep everything happening, even though he says that the wheels have to just turn on their own, which I thought was a very interesting thing to say at the very end. But a lot going on for sure.
Yeah. One of the things that you and I were talking about off mic before we started recording this episode was how big a role Padmé plays in the season to this point.
Yeah.
And part of that observation is based on recency bias, but I'm just looking at the episode guide right now. The first 2 episodes are about the clone cadets and ARC troopers, And then there is the Supply Lines episode. So she's not really a player in those, and then she's not in the fourth one, which is the Pantorans, the George Lucas character. But then we get the Mando arc, and she's a big player in that one. And then we get the Assassin episode where she's the target for Aurra Sing. And the Evil Plans, she's there to send R2-D2 and C-3PO on their mission to, well, as actually Anakin, but she told him to do that, to go at the mail rooms. We get a break for the Hunt for Zero, but then she's back last week on Heroes for Both Sides, and then now it's Pursuit of Peace. So it's heavy on this now. She's going to be absent because we're getting ready to come up on the whole Night Sisters and Maul and Savage Opress thing here in just a bit. But it's really been a weird pace for this season so far, because we've seen Obi-Wan, we've seen Anakin, but other than the one episode that Obi-Wan featured in, The Hunt for Zero, okay, I should back up. When I think of the Clone Wars, I think the big three: Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. But this half the season has really not been that. She's had more screen time than all three of them.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it would probably shock us to know exactly how many minutes total, because you're right. And obviously when you think of the Clone Wars, you don't necessarily your mind doesn't go to all the political stuff that's happening, even though obviously that's why it's called Clone Wars, Star Wars. I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with that and outlines, the underlying things that are happening, but you just don't realize how much of a time is being devoted to this until you go back and, as we've been doing, recapping these episodes and rewatching them.
Right, exactly. And the other thing about this is that this is yet another episode that precedes the Senate Murders episode from season 2. So we were joking about that when we talked about the Clone Wars last week on Wednesday, about how, it's like we now return you to your scheduled Clone War. But, it's later this season. And I think, next week starts stuff with, like I said, Night Sisters, Maul, Savage Opress, and the like. And it's much more linear going forward. But it's just a little weird that they just, that I don't know if that Senate Murders idea was developed outside of all of these, or if it came first and then inspired all of this, but it's just a little strange the way that it all panned out. But they took one key episode out of the middle of this arc, and here we are, but it's now coming to a close with all of this. So all right, so back to the political machinations here. So the attack on Coruscant's power supply is what powered through the banking deregulation bill last week when we talked about this. And that's not the end of the story. They lost the battle, but not the war. They still have to vote to fund the battle droids. And Padmé is against this. She wants to pursue the peace process. And then, of course, the word comes from Count Dooku that Bonteri was murdered, and Bail finds out from spies that it was Dooku's own thugs that did this and tried to pin it on the Republic. And when Padmé goes to find out about the loan with her from the Bacon clan, she finds it's going to be 25%. And not only that, when she kind of protests about that, the senator from the Bacon clan points out that the Separatists just took out a loan to build 3 million more battle droids on this. So when we hear about corruption in the prequel trilogy, this episode puts a neon sign that points right towards it.
Oh, definitely.
There's a whole lot going on here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And again, the idea of just working both sides, they're just looking at what's most profitable. And of course, the Kaminoan senator wants to support this bill because that's going to be money in her pocket for her, Kaminoans as well. So everybody's trying to profit off of it.
I know we've talked about this before, but it's just how blatantly the Banking Clan Center is just talking about this. It doesn't bother him at all that he's playing both sides, that he's profiting from both, that he can claim that his organization is still part of the Republic and has voting rights. He doesn't say so much, but I'm paraphrasing here from a collection of episodes here, while he supports the other side of the war. And I mean, the Trade Federation holds it over some world's heads that they're neutral, but they still have representation in the Senate.
Right.
And I guess if I'm trying to reconcile this and come up with an explanation, it's simply this. It's that the Republic cannot function without the banking clan, without the Trade Federation, without these various other corporate entities that are out there. And those corporate entities know it. And so they are going to maintain their representation in the heart of the Republic, in the Senate, where they can influence things and remind everybody that you need us. And they don't have consciences, otherwise they wouldn't be doing this, but there's nothing you can do about it. You cannot fight the war without money. We have the money.
Mm-hmm. And they almost have this like, what you gonna do about it kind of attitude, because they know, like you said, they can do it from all sides and still be profitable.
Right. The biggest difference between Star Wars and our world is that if this situation came up, one of the two sides would have seized all their assets at this point and say
Exactly.
you can't be part of an organization and then aid the enemy. That's treason. But at any rate, this is what then inspires Padme throughout the rest of the episode. She appeals to Bail Organa to make a speech to the Senate because of how eloquent he is, how great a speaker he is. And if there's any hope of defeating this funding bill, it would come from him. And so he agrees to do it. He's kind of reluctant. He doesn't come out and say that he's been intimidated by this, but he kind of makes it clear that he's not the leader of this movement. And so he's been encouraging Padme from the sidelines, but he finally breaks down and agrees to do it, only to be injured by these thugs. And so it falls on Padme to make the speech, but it's her aide, Tekla, that encouraged her because she reminds her, like, you listen to us. You're actually worried about our concerns. Whereas, and I'm sorry, I'm monopolizing the conversation, but the stark contrast of the banking clan here, like they're not concerned about anybody else. They're just concerned about making money in this situation.
Well, and of course, I mean, this just brings to light everything that Padme is and that we know that she is, which is very empathetic and compassionate to all of those that she serves. And she wants to make sure that, and she even mentions this, that the infrastructure needs to be preserved, that there's healthcare that depends upon this, education that depends upon this, and all of that is, part of who she supports on a daily basis. But I think it was really interesting when she, as you said, she goes to Bail and basically begs him to convince the Senate, that this bill needs to convince them, and that she's going to go and talk to individual senators because they're only 6 votes shy, she mentions. But yet when she goes to the Mon Cal, and I know you have it in our notes here somewhere, but I can't think of his name right off the top of my head.
Christo.
Thank you, Christo. And she goes to him and says, we need to do this. He says, well, I will listen to Bail Organa, and basically kind of casts her aside. Like, whatever you're saying doesn't mean anything. And I just wonder if that's because of everything that had happened with Naboo beforehand. And so some of the senators are a little bit shy about kind of siding with what, Padme has to say just in and of herself because of that. Did you get any feeling of that at all?
I think you're on the right track there. I don't know if it's because of the Trade Federation blockade of Naboo, but it's, they don't give us political parties during the prequel area of this, but she is a very vocal voice for a certain side of the Senate. And so it almost kind of makes, she starts talking. There's some people that just aren't going to listen for whatever reason that may be. She's called out a lot of senators over time. She is a very progressive voice there in the Senate. She supports peace. She's not as afraid of the Separatists. She wants to extend that olive branch and she's frustrated that their peace hasn't been given a chance. About to break out a 60 song, but anyway, and she wants to give it a try. And she wants to take that step, but these senators are also afraid, which is, they also know that if they support this peace movement, which is like, let's put down our weapons and negotiate, well, that can be used against them, that you're not protecting your homeworlds, on this situation. So I think there's a lot that goes into it. And meanwhile, Bail is more senior in the Senate. He's been around longer. He's got a bit more respect. I don't think he's viewed as much of a firebrand by comparison
Mm-hmm.
to Padme. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that is why. And if he's just got, we've seen Padme give good speeches, but we may not have seen Bale give many, but he's got a reputation for being an excellent orator. So can be someone who can be
Right.
very convincing. So I think there's a lot of things that go into it.
Right. And I don't think it really helped Padme's case much that Anaconda Farr went with her in his sling,
Yep.
because then Christo's going to look at that and be like, well, why do I want to side with you? I mean, look what happens to people. But one more thing I wanted to point out too is the fact that Padme was pleading to Christo about the clones themselves. And that's another thing that Padme had compassion for, is that, we're creating these clones and then what's happening to them. And Krista was basically like, I don't care. That's what they were created for. So again, it's just another thing that's showing Padme's compassion.
Right. And that becomes an issue in the Bad Batch and in the Mask of Fear book that
Right.
Alexander Freer's wrote. So
Right. And we
it's
get to
kind
see
of,
Tucci too in this at some point, this
yeah,
particular episode.
she's she's in the background for certain. So yeah, I mean, what's cool about this is, so all this gets interrupted when the thugs who have just received orders from Dooku to eliminate Padme. So Dooku's come around to Viceroy Gunray's way of thinking on things.
Mm-hmm.
And they go after her, and she steals a bark speeder to get away. And yeah, I did appreciate that scene there, because it's, don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed the Clone Wars, I've enjoyed our discussions of these episodes, but it really has been heavy on the political intrigue and not as much about completing missions for the sake of like winning the war at this
Mm-hmm.
point anymore. And so, they to some degree they've kind of taken the war out of Star Wars, but but that was, well, one, I like the appearance of the Selkath. That character species was created for Knights of the Old Republic back in the early 2000s. And so they adapted it for use in the Clone Wars, which was a nice little use of an old asset.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact too that Padme is all about, oh yeah, I'm going to go negotiate on behalf of the Senate, but oh, I also carry my holdout blaster no matter where I go.
Exactly.
So she knows that she could be at any time targeted, and she's willing to protect herself because of it. She's not blind to that, even though she on one hand she keeps saying, oh, nothing's going to happen, I want to get some fresh air, I want to walk, a walk will do me good, but yet, like I said, she's got her holdout blaster, so she knows in the back of her mind that something could happen.
Right. Bale, meanwhile, is not so lucky. When he gets jumped by these same thugs, he actually gets injured before the police droids show up and take care of them. So I know they couldn't
Yeah.
do it, but it seems like maybe deploying some Jedi to be around the Senate and places that senators regularly hang out would have been a good idea at this point.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Where are
especially
the
with,
Jedi protectors?
right, a number of reports that senators have been attacked. But so this is what inspires or requires Padme to make her speech, because with Bale was it. He was the one that was going to present everything, and everything was riding on Bale, but he can't do it now that he's injured. And so Padme has to pluck up the courage and the message to do this. And that's where she's been talking to Tekla, and Tekla tells her about the difficulties that the wars put her family, her friends, and everyone in. The unreliability of power and water, and the lack of resources to school her children and the like. But the one thing I can't get over is when she basically hands Padme her hair,
Yeah.
because she has to go prepare for the speech. And so we find out that these elaborate hairstyles that Padme employs are frequently wigs.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yep. It is
I mean,
indeed. Yeah. And that I mean, in some ways it's a little surprising because yeah, we always thought that maybe a lot of these were her hair, but then again, I mean, there's definitely so much elaborate design to them that they couldn't possibly be.
she'd spend half her day just getting her hair done
Oh yeah, for
if that was the
sure.
case. And it's not, she can go sleep with that hairstyle. So the other half of the day getting
Mhm.
it taken down. But
Mhm.
It just, I don't know. It just did make me giggle that, here's your hair.
Right. Almost like, "Come on, put your big girl shoes on. Let's go."
So time is running out and Bail Organa hasn't shown up to make the speech. And just when the Senate's about to take the vote, that's when Padme says that she'll speak on behalf of Bail Organa. And she makes the speech, talks about the common person. And we get the reaction from all kinds of senators, especially those that I kind of identify as being separatist leaning and warmongering, war supporters, all clapping and applauding this. And the bill is successfully defeated. And this is followed up by a shot from inside Palpatine's office where he's lamenting how Padme, one senator, managed to sway the vote and kind of thwart the long-term plans of the ruler of the galaxy. And for now, he's not going to interfere with the workings of democracy. So, up until now, they've done a really good job of just not letting the cat out of the bag that Palpatine is in fact Sidious.
Mhm.
But they certainly make him look more sinister than ever here.
Oh, definitely. 100%. And almost as if he's saying, "Yeah, we'll just let these wheels turn, but I'm still driving the car."
Yeah. This is, again, he lost the battle, but the war's not over yet. So
Yes.
this will create opportunities later here. He just, and that's just kind of one of the things that's fun about Palpatine and / Sidious is that, everything has proceeded as I have foreseen it, that type of thing
Yes.
here. And so, he's got contingency plans inside of his contingency plans. And, you know, while he might express some mild irritation here, this is just a minor setback for him.
Mhm, mhm, indeed. And it's also, kind of setting up why he was, so wanting Padme out of the picture later on when he finally takes Anakin under his wing too, because I think he knew exactly how influential she could be. She
Yeah,
needed to be out of the picture.
indeed. Indeed. All right. Well, I think we've hit the high points on this. Is there anything else you want to bring up before we wrap up the episode?
Yeah, I mean, just real quickly, you'd mentioned Padme's. I don't even know if I would call her a handmaiden. She's more of her aide, Tekla,
Right.
that kind of inspired her to, do all of this and speak in front of the Senate and everything. And I thought that was a nice touch. And then when Padme was giving her speech, I noticed Monument Plaza, and again, this is one of those things with what's the name of the peak? Is it Umate? Is that
Yeah.
what it was?
Uh-huh.
And thank you. And so I was like, "Oh, that's so cool," because it's one of those things that in the past I would have just not even really keyed in on, but now that we've had so much of that from, things like Andor and whatnot, so cool to see.
Right.
It just really drew my eye.
Yeah. This came first, but where I remember that from is the High Republic, when the Chancellor is like there making a speech.
Oh, yeah.
And then, like you said, we got to see it in Andor as well. And I think actually it shows up in the new the new end scenes from Return of the Jedi as well. I'm not positive about that, but yeah, it's something that's been developed over time, and it was kind of this quiet detail, and it's gotten bigger and bigger over the past few years. So,
Mhm.
mhm.
Yes.
All right. Well, then, I think that'll do it for this discussion of Pursuit of Peace, and we'll wrap up this episode. So, thank you for joining us for this discussion of the Clone Wars. And if you've enjoyed it and you want to get our ongoing discussions, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And when we get these done, usually on Mondays, they'll download for you automatically. And after you've subscribed, we'd appreciate your ratings, reviews, wherever you can leave those. And then you can head over to retrozapp.com and check out the entire back catalog, as well as all of our conversation about the Clone Wars for the past, year and a half, 2 years? I can't remember where we started this, but
Been a
they're all
while.
there. So, yeah, Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody one more time about our social media contacts and our other homes on the internet?
Absolutely. So we are most conveniently found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust for our socials. And then you can always check out all of our Pinterest boards, and you can listen to us on YouTube and YouTube Music, as well as all of your other podcatchers and streaming services. And if you'd like to drop us a line, you can do so at podcaststardust@gmail.com. Still looking for listener questions as always. I mean, we love to be open to that kind of thing. So any kind of ideas that you have, just send those over to our Gmail. And then we also have an expanded merch line over on our TeePublic store. Not that we expanded it, it's just over there. And so the link that was in our show notes, or is in our show notes, will take you to 7 different show logo designs on all kinds of fun things, now including things like socks, which I'm super excited for that, and ball caps, so which I definitely want to pick up.
Indeed. You want to remind everybody what you got going on is cosplay.
Yes. So as always, you can catch me on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. And I am still considering going to Fan Expo Cleveland. So you'll just have to check that out. It all depends upon the arrival of the upcoming bebe. So once again, j.snipscosplay.
All right. Upcoming on the show on Wednesday, we are dipping back into The Force Awakens with part 2 of that series. We'll be discussing the part of the movie that runs from 10 minutes and 41 seconds to 23 minutes and 40 seconds. We got a great guest. We've already recorded that episode, and we can't wait to bring it to y'all. And then on Friday, we are wrapping up the week with whatever Star Wars news is out there. So it'll be interesting to see after we got the trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu last week. So that was fun to talk about. So maybe there's something else big this week. Stay tuned. Okay. Well, thanks for listening to episode 1003, everyone. Have a great week. And until next time, may the Force be with you.